Remember that time when the Hulk declared war on planet Earth? I mean, he came and soloed all of Earth's heroes. I'm talking the Inhumans, the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four. He single-handedly handled them all. One of my more favorite tropes in media is when the hero turns bad, specifically in more long-form types of media. For example, we can take someone like Roman Reigns. For the majority of his early run, he was actually primed to be the next John Cena. But suddenly, he had a switch and he turned into one of the biggest villains or heels the WWE has ever seen. Or we can take someone like Anakin Skywalker, as over the course of 3 movies we see him turn from the literal chosen one into a dark and sinister Sith Lord. In Anakin's case, he was always meant to be the villain. I mean, Darth Vader was introduced first. What I find more interesting is when you have a well-established hero, or like a good guy, and you take him, twist his ideals and you turn him into a villain, and not just any random villain, a villain that threatens the entire universe he inhabits. By the way, I'm trying out a new type of style of content. Let me know if you guys enjoy it and want to see more type of stuff like this where I just talk about things that I like. And I love how when I want to record something, I got the entire Justice League outside my window like I'm Lex Luthor or something. Like, why do I have helicopters just circling the block? Like, come on. When a hero turns bad, I'm not talking about something in an alternate universe like Injustice Superman. I think it is more interesting and more impactful for the reader when it is in the mainline continuity. In this video, we're gonna go over 3 of my favorite examples of this trope of the fallen hero archetype. Perhaps the most prime example of this archetype comes from the character Macbeth, from the Shakespearean tragedy Macbeth. By looking at this character, we can see what it actually means to fit this archetype. Here you have this seemingly renowned warrior for his time, generally well respected by the people of Scotland. However, soon comes a turning point due to some meddling dark forces and other supernatural forces at play. Macbeth becomes ambitious, arrogant, soon killing his king and taking the throne for himself. All of this to end up backfiring in his face, and he ends the story dead. However, in the case of Macbeth, he isn't a goody two-shoes. He actually has a predisposition to violence. In the beginning of the story, he literally unseams someone from the nave to the chaps. Here's me doing your English GCSE for you, but the point is, he's certainly no hero. The specific type of fallen hero I find the most interesting is the type where it is a beloved hero who makes that personal choice to turn evil, something more unexpected than Macbeth, something free from any type of magical control or brainwashing like, say, Poison Ivy to Superman or Hydra to the Winter Soldier. But still, what Macbeth shows us is the requirements needed in order to fit this type of trope. First of all, you need a hero, a protagonist of some kind. Second of all, you need a tragic event or some type of turning point that flips the hero's morals. And then third of all, you need the hero to go absolutely crazy on their universe. Without further ado, let's meet our first example. The time when Green Lantern became Parallax. The story of Emerald Twilight might have been the earliest encounter I actually had with this trope, and it's probably for that reason that this story has stuck with me so much. I was a big fan of Green Lantern when I was younger. I mean, I watched Justice League Unlimited, which had the... why am I blanking on his name now? John Stewart, sorry. Bro, John Stewart, how could I forget that, man? You know when you're just put on the spot? I was actually also a major fan of the Green Lantern show, and that's the one that had Hal Jordan in it. But the idea is that Green Lantern as a character is very well established, and was very well established also at the time this story was written. But to give a little context to those uninitiated with the mythos of Green Lantern, Hal Jordan specifically, he protects a city called Coast City. And prior to when this story takes place, Coast City was absolutely decimated. So you can imagine everyone that Hal Jordan knew and loved was just gone. So in the beginning of this story arc, we find him mourning the loss of Coast City after the battle is already over. It's a tragedy and he feels absolutely helpless. I mean, imagine having the power to make anything you want just by using your brain and your willpower, but you can't even protect those you care about with that power. Now, as he's mourning this tragedy, his pain and his grief manifests itself as images of his father and his mother, and they basically tell him that, hey, everyone's gone, but you still have the memories. You can hold on to them and get past this. You know, that whole type of grief talk. But very understandably, Hal Jordan thinks that that's not enough. The memories aren't enough. And remember how I told you he has the power to create anything he imagines. Through sheer will, he recreates the entire city. But of course, let's remember, it's not real, they're just manifestation, they're constructs of willpower. Now, I find this story very interesting because of how it handles the question of what does it take for a good man to turn evil? And the answer it provides is actually very kind of complex. In its basic form, it says that it's grief. Grief is something that's not very easy to deal with. For some people, grief never goes away, or the grief that they feel is still so strong after many years of handling it. For the ordinary person, they might be able to distract themselves from their grief, but as a whole, there's not really much they can do about their grief. They just have to move on, they're forced to. But not for Hal Jordan. He's a Green Lantern, and Green Lanterns can make whatever they will. They have the potential power to play God, and that's where the Guardians of the Universe intervene. Now, for those of you watching the video who aren't really familiar with comics, the Guardians of the Universe are basically the administrators or the managers of the Green Lantern Corps. If you think of the Green Lanterns as police officers, then the people who manage police officers are the Guardians of the Universe. They make the rings, they give the rings to people, all that yada yada. But they also make the rules. So one of the Guardians appeared to Hal Jordan, telling him that he's violated the most sacred rule, using his ring for personal gain. And when a Green Lantern breaks a rule, they have to answer to the Guardians. So they have to travel back to the main planet of the Green Lanterns and answer for their crimes. I think a similar thing happens to Sinestro in canon, but with multiple canons. I don't know, bro. But what Hal Jordan does officially starts his kind of villain arc, let's say. His winter arc. I forgot the meme, bro. Since the Guardian appeared to him as a construct, he thrusts his ring into the construct and draws power from it, declaring that he's going to seek more power, and that when he comes back to Oa, they're not gonna like what they see, bro. But the idea is that Green Lantern doesn't have enough power to remake Coast City by himself. His ring isn't that powerful, but if he gains more power, more rings, more energy from the Guardians, then maybe he'll be able to remake Coast City just as he likes. And so what he does is he carves a bloody path back to Oa. Because it's a different planet from Earth, he has to travel a bit, you know. But Green Lanterns are sent by the Guardians to stop Hal Jordan, and each one he just cuts them down and takes their ring. And that's where you get that iconic image of Green Lantern with all the rings. And I don't know about you, but I've always loved this image. I think it's so raw. It's just cold. Pure aura. Oh, that sounded horrible saying that out loud. Some things you have to save them for the TikTok comments. But here's a man who's lost everything and just says, yeah, let's go crazy. When Hal Jordan finally lands on Oa, who else meets him but Sinestro? And again, for those uninitiated with Green Lantern lore, Sinestro is basically Hal Jordan's Joker. He's the main enemy, he's the arch rival. And it shows you how desperate the Guardians are at this point to stop Hal Jordan. He's carved the craziest warpath across the universe just to get back to Oa. They've given Sinestro a Green Lantern ring. Usually he's a Yellow Lantern, but he's given his Green Lantern ring back, just in the hopes that he maybe he'll be able to take down this crazy Hal Jordan. But Hal Jordan, he's just the Green Lantern, bro, and Sinestro was never gonna be able to do nothing. And probably one of the most craziest fights you'll ever see ensues with Hal Jordan eventually just beating down on Sinestro. And for me, this singular comic panel where Hal Jordan looks down at the defeated Sinestro and slowly walks away is such a great scene, bro. It solidifies that Hal Jordan has completely gone off the deep end, and if that wasn't enough, he goes on to murder his best friend in a single blast, and after he just breaks down, admitting that he's crossed the line and he can't go back. But that isn't actually the moment in which Hal Jordan crosses the line, the boundary, and becomes Parallax. That comes when he goes into the central Green Lantern battery. This is essentially where every Green Lantern draws their power from. He goes in there and absorbs the whole entire thing in a great big explosion, and that's finally where we see Parallax. After this, Parallax flies off and then goes on to be a major threat for the DC universe. He basically wants to recreate the entire universe and everyone has to team up to stop him. But what separates him from normal villains is that he was once a hero. He's kind of right in a sense. If he remakes the universe in his image, he can erase all the bad things that happen in the universe. But the counter argument to that is, at what cost? As Superman says to Parallax in this comic, he set himself up to be God by killing billions. And I think that's the type of debate or interaction that you can only have with a fallen hero, a former hero. This is Superman's former ally and friend. And you also have to understand the type of guts that it takes to take a sort of beloved character. I mean, they were trying to replace Hal Jordan at this point, which is why they turned him evil. But a beloved character of sorts and turn him evil, because with comics you want to avoid retcons by any means possible. So when you make a change to a character, it has lasting impacts unless you go ahead and retcon it. And in later iterations of Green Lantern, we see DC's desperate attempts to try and backtrack or retract from the whole Parallax arc. And that's where I start to have an issue. If Green Lantern underwent this Parallax arc, it should have stayed that way. If you want to turn him into a hero again, you have to have a redemption arc, but Parallax should remain Parallax. Instead, DC tried to retcon it by stating once Hal Jordan went into the Green Lantern power battery and absorbed all the energy, there was actually a hidden creature inside of the power battery that latched itself onto Hal Jordan and caused him to actually go insane, forgetting the fact that he was already killing people way before that. And of course, this creature was the manifestation of fear, the fear entity known as Parallax. And obviously, because they introduce a fear entity, they then have to introduce other emotional entities. So you have an entity for willpower, entity for anger, compassion, love, whatever. And that's just fucking bullshit, bro. Let's be honest. Let's be real. But what I enjoy is that Hal Jordan for a period of time was throwing hands with some of the strongest entities in DC, all because of his grief, his selfish desire and unwillingness to let it go. He tricks himself into thinking that he's being selfless and that he's gonna protect the universe by changing it. I think it does a great job of diving into how a superpowered being with the powers of a god basically would deal with something like a mass tragedy that would bring an immense amount of grief. Because we all feel helpless. But what is that like for someone who can do everything? But anyway, let's go ahead and meet my second example, and for this we're gonna go back to the start of the video.
Hulk is strongest now!
For context, Hulk was deemed a dangerous threat, and so a team comprised of Namor the Submariner, Black Panther, Iron Man, Charles Xavier, Mr. Fantastic and Doctor Strange, so some of the greatest minds in Marvel and the most influential people in that universe, devised a plan to get rid of the Hulk forever. If they could just shoot him to some distant world where there was no life at all, then he could just live out his days there. Now that I actually say the plan out loud, you realize how dark it is. Like, that's dark, bro. Like, why would you do that? Like, Bruce Banner is a person. Like, he's also the Hulk. Like, you're just gonna send him there and just like X him, like hope he just dies. Like, so what they actually do, and I remember this very clearly, they kind of trick Hulk into boarding this satellite, and they're like, you're gonna do this type of satellite fixing thing or whatever. It's some mission in space, you know, Avengers stuff. But whilst Hulk is in the satellite, they basically send him a message saying, yo, you're gone, bro. We don't want you here. And of course, Hulk realizes what's going on and he gets mad, starts shaking the whole place. And so this brings the ship off course. He goes into some wormhole, I think, and he ends up on a planet inhabited by people. But not just any planet, it's a gladiatorial arena type of planet where they're just doing gladiator fights. Hulk, of course, being the strongest one there is, easily decimates the competition. Obviously, at the beginning he struggles a bit, let's be real, he struggles a bit. But then, after he gains his composure, gains his feet again, he easily decimates everyone on his planet, overthrows the ruling class, leading a revolution, and takes his place as king of the planet. And Hulk is happy, he has a wife and a child on the way. But when investigating the ship that brought him here, very quickly they discover that there's a severe problem with the ship. And they don't have enough time. As soon as it's discovered, the ship explodes, taking everybody around it with it. This explosion is so momentous, so huge, it takes out the nearby city, Hulk's city, with Hulk's people living inside of it, Hulk's wife and unborn baby. There are some people on this planet who were comparable to Hulk in terms of strength, but even they were not durable enough to survive this explosion. But perhaps the one person out of everybody who died, the one person you wouldn't want to survive that explosion if you were someone like Iron Man or Mr. Fantastic, that one person being the Hulk. And of course he did. Everyone who was outside of the blast radius also managed to survive, and this includes a large portion of Hulk's royal guard, who are aptly named his Warbound. And like what their name suggests, they tell Hulk to declare war on planet Earth. And what do you think Hulk says, this being of pure anger? But this isn't just Hulk, the rampaging Hulk. This is a Hulk who uniquely has the intelligence of Bruce Banner, but with the physical strength of the Hulk. So when he's declaring war, he prepares because he wants to decimate the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and everyone on that team that sent him to the planet in the first place. And so this begins the crossover story of World War Hulk, where Hulk returns home, first making a stop on the moon, because this is the home of the Inhumans and the Inhuman leader Black Bolt, who was a member of that team called the Illuminati. Black Bolt is someone, for those uninitiated with the Inhumans, he has the power to basically destroy anything when he speaks. Basically think Black Canary, like when she screams she also makes those sound waves that destroys anything in its path. But Black Bolt is on a whole nother scale. A whisper can destroy a building. So when Hulk arrives, he's obviously like, yeah, I gotta whisper to this guy. He's like, enough. And he expects Hulk to just be gone. But what does Hulk say to Black Bolt, this person who could maybe even destroy a planet if he shouted? He says to Black Bolt, I didn't come here for no flipping whisper. I want to hear you scream. Pause. And so Hulk's revenge is a bloody warpath. He dismantles every hero that comes against him. Eventually they have to get basically Marvel's equivalent of Superman to try and stop him. But even then, Hulk undergoes this crazy transformation, turning into the World Breaker Hulk. And he almost obliterates the entire planet just by walking. What I love about the Planet Hulk and World War Hulk storylines is that it further explores the tragedy of the Hulk. He can never truly be happy, even when he escapes Earth. He just can't catch a break. His transformation into a villain is really what you expect when you have a character like the Hulk. But what makes this so interesting is that Hulk isn't really the villain, it's the Marvel heroes. It's this secret organization, the Illuminati, these so-called protectors of Earth who kind of crowned themselves, gave themselves that title. And this is further explored in other comics where you have characters inside of the Illuminati, the more level-headed ones like Black Panther and Namor, actively calling out the hypocrisy of this whole organization. When Hulk returns to Earth and devastates the combined forces of the Avengers, X-Men and Fantastic Four, or wherever they've assembled, it's really what they brought upon themselves. But of course, in the idea of comics, Hulk is still the villain of the story, and so at the end the villain has to lose, and so he reverts back to Bruce Banner. The Hulk's warpath finally over. Then perhaps the most compelling transformation that we've seen so far, and I think this is because this one was the most gradual. It happened over multiple comics and tie-ins. I'm of course talking about Cyclops, his ideas and methodologies slowly radicalizing, turning him from simple mutant leader to mutant revolutionary. And I have to admit, when he first turned into a villain in Avengers vs X-Men, I didn't like it, but I think that's because I was younger and I didn't really understand what he was really fighting for. But looking back at it now that I'm older, I realized how realistic this transformation was and how good it kind of was. Because mutants have always represented marginalized groups, and throughout history, what do we see what happens when marginalized groups are constantly oppressed? They radicalize, they turn revolutionary, they rebel against government and state. And so this happening to Cyclops was extremely likely. And what I particularly like about this one is how Marvel stuck to it. I mean, they stuck to it so much that they had to bring a younger version of Cyclops just so that they could have the normal Cyclops, because his transformation stuck far back as 2012 to 2015, and I know it continued long after that as well. But since this transformation is very long, I really won't go over all of it. I'll go over the main points. Essentially, his worldview shifted. I mean, he started allying himself with people like Magneto, Namor, and Emma Frost. These are like long-time villains of the X-Men. This all came to a boiling point when the Phoenix Force returned to Earth. The Phoenix Force imbued its power into Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Colossus, and someone else I forgot. But essentially, as many of you probably know if you're familiar with the X-Men, along with those who are also familiar with the X-Men movies, the Phoenix Force has a dark influence on its host. Much like how Hal Jordan became obsessed with power, Cyclops also became obsessed with power, and eventually he just started taking the Phoenix Force by force. Hey, no pun intended. From the other like 4 hosts of the Phoenix Force. Basically, their plan was to make the world a better place for mutants, which is a good goal, but again, the way they went about it was very radical. Cyclops is confronted by the combined forces of the X-Men and the Avengers, and he takes them all on. Even Professor X confronts him, but he's too far gone. He mercilessly kills Professor Xavier. Eventually he is stopped, but not before taking on some of the biggest heavy hitters in the Marvel universe. Even after this event, the ramifications of Cyclops' fall still haunts him. They keep him locked up, throw away the key, all of that. They are not letting him free. But what's most interesting about Cyclops is that he wasn't really an outright villain. He was right most of the time. At the point when Avengers vs X-Men was taking place, I think, and someone can correct me here, that House of M had kind of just happened, and essentially no more mutants were being born, so this meant that mutant kind was essentially dying out. And of course, for the rest of the world, this isn't a problem because mutants they're not really human, they're different. But for mutant kind, this is a problem, and Cyclops is basically the de facto leader of the mutants. So when the Phoenix Force comes back, this is potentially a way out for Cyclops. He can lead his people to salvation. But then here comes the Avengers thinking that they can get their grubby hands all over mutant problems. And I think Cyclops is also the most tragic, because where Green Lantern is retconned to be controlled by an entity, and the Hulk is basically kind of forgiven, I think. I don't remember quite well. Cyclops is alienated from everyone. I think to this day Cyclops is still radicalized, but I think going forward when they start introducing mutants to the MCU, they're probably gonna go back on Cyclops and make him normal Cyclops again, you know, the leader of the X-Men and all that. And now here comes probably my favorite part of the video. If there was any hero that I wanted to turn bad, that I wanted to turn into that Avengers level threat, who would it be? And as I thought it over, I think the most interesting character that you could take and twist into a villain, but it'd have to be a really, really good writer, I can't lie. But I think this character would be Spider-Man. Now hear me out a bit. Spider-Man has never really been a universe-ending threat or like a planetary level threat. But with the introduction of Null into the MCU, I think there will probably be some type of Null event in the comics again, even though I don't personally know too much about Null, because that was around the time I stopped reading comics, and maybe I should get into it. Let me know if I should get into Null. Is Null good? Like, I haven't really heard great things about Null. It would be very interesting to see a greater symbiotic Spider-Man, not one that's mind controlled or anything, but toying with the idea of with great power comes great responsibility. How far does that responsibility go? Will it be something akin to Parallax, where he believes he has the responsibility to change the universe, to make things right, you know? And what would be that tragic event that sends Spider-Man over the edge? Because Spider-Man has been through everything imaginable. They don't let this guy rest. So that would be very interesting to see. If someone could pull it off, I'd love to see it. But that's all from me today. I hope you guys did enjoy this video. It was unscripted, so I hope I didn't ramble too much. Let me know if I should script it, or if you guys enjoyed this style of content, but I'm pretty sure I will make more discussions like this in the future. Anyway, I've been your boy Polar. Peace.